So I've just tried to sum up the emerging patterns that we have seen here. People may disagree, but I have the advantage of being the last speaker. So I can take this opportunity to share what I see. And that is that for BCG vaccine, and summarizing up what we saw from the 5 trials from the different countries, recent BCG seemed to reduce COVID-19 incidence in the vulnerable people, in the Greek hospital patients, and in the US type 1 diabetes patients. We didn't see any effect in the Netherlands, but that may relate to the lack of boosting effects. We also saw that BCG may increase symptoms of disease, actually, and we discussed whether that was an increased immune response that led to this increased symptomatology. But at the same time, if we summarize the slides on the BCG vaccine, then we have an overall effect at almost or more than 40% reduction in all-cause mortality associated with BCG. So this is a combined analysis which shows that maybe symptoms increases, but overall mortality decreases. And then there is the whole issue that we talked about. Is it a booster vaccine that's beneficial? Do we need to wait more years for seeing effects? So actually maybe some of the trials that are now conducted in the Netherlands and South Africa and Denmark may show beneficial effects if we wait some years. And we touched upon the issue of strain. I personally don't think it's a good explanation for the heterogeneous effects of BCG vaccine. And then we also talked about, was it the wrong pandemic? Could we actually have had stronger effects against influenza, which some murine data and also the data from the Netherlands suggest. For MMR vaccine and all polio vaccine, we still haven't got much data, but it looks encouraging. There are some interesting sex differences in the Guinea-Bissau trial, which is hopefully going to be explored in the Russian trial. And lastly, we have this new guy on the team, the VP1002, and it looks as if it both reduces the incidence and severity of COVID-19, which seems a bit different from the BCG effect. So it will be super interesting to follow in the coming years what comes out of this vaccine, not only in terms of tuberculosis-specific outcomes, but also non-specific outcomes. But the general pattern I see emerging here for at least the 3 known vaccines is that there might be negative or no effect on symptoms and incidence of infection, except from perhaps in the most vulnerable groups, and then perhaps dependent on a booster, but a positive effect on overall survival with some important effect modifiers that we have touched upon during this webinar. For the way forward, my obviously biased opinion is that I think we have good evidence here that non-specific effects of vaccines are relevant in the pandemic situation and perhaps in future pandemics with influenza. But the really big question that we're not going to have time to address today is really how are we going to move on in the future. That will lead to hopefully many discussions among people in the coming days and weeks and months. I will wish to close this webinar right now, and well, I don't wish to, I wish we could continue, but I have to close this webinar right now, and I really have some people to thank, and I'll do it very quickly in the interest of time, but I want to thank very warmly the organizing committee, Eleanor Fish, Katie Flanagan, Sabra Klein, Tobias Coleman, and Jorge Domingos Andres, and Frederick Charles Buchhauser, because you have been and you are fantastic. I love you. I want to thank the speakers for fantastic presentations and not least for generously sharing preliminary results. You're true scientists. And I want to thank my co-panelists for great discussion. We should have had much more time. I also want to thank Arthur Jeunesse that you saw helping me here with my slides, our young student assistant who has been a tremendous help with all the practical aspects. And I want to thank the Danish Institute for Advanced Study, my favorite playground where researchers from 5 faculties meet, create, and conduct interdisciplinary blue sky research. I want to thank them for hosting this webinar and the conference in November. I want to thank the private donor who wishes to remain anonymous for financial support and faith in me. And lastly, I want to thank all the audience for being here, for great questions and your interest in this subject. If you are more interested in non-specific effects of vaccines after this webinar, you are all warmly welcome to join OPTIMMUNIZE, our consortium with Eleanor Fish as the director. If you're interested, send me an email to get on the mailing list. There are no strings attached. And you're also warmly welcome at the conference in November. I'm presenting it here behind me. You can find it on the internet and sign up for a hopefully great meeting. So with that, I want to close this meeting saying goodbye and thank you to all of you.